The notification chimed at 11:47 p.m., cutting through the silence of Ethan's idling sedan like a blade through silk. He'd been parked outside a 24-hour diner in downtown Albany for the past 20 minutes, nursing lukewarm coffee that had long since lost its appeal. The graveyard shift was always like this, long stretches of nothing punctuated by brief bursts of activity that barely covered the gas money. Ethan Chen had been driving for RideLink for 3 years now. 3 years of drunks, insomniacs, shift workers, and the occasional cheating spouse. 3 years of watching the city transform from the driver's seat, learning its rhythms, its secrets, its dark corners. At 42 years old, with a failed marriage and a studio apartment that smelled perpetually of instant ramen, this was what his life had become. But he was good at it. He knew every shortcut, every pothole, every speed trap between Albany and Saratoga Springs. The app showed a pickup at the Riverside Corporate Center, about 8 minutes away. 5-star passenger rating. Destination, a residential address in Clifton Park, roughly 30 minutes north. Standard suburban run, nothing unusual. Ethan pulled out of the diner parking lot and headed east, the city's streetlights casting orange halos in the light drizzle that had started an hour ago. The roads were nearly empty, just the way he preferred them. Less traffic meant less stress, less chance of some idiot running a red light or cutting him off. At this hour, Albany belonged to people like him, the night workers, the insomniacs, the ones who existed in the margins. The Riverside Corporate Center loomed ahead, a glass and steel monument to corporate ambition that looked almost sinister in the darkness. Most of the building was dark, except for a few scattered windows on the upper floors. Security lights illuminated the main entrance, where a single figure stood waiting, silhouetted against the glass doors. As Ethan pulled up to the curb, he got his first real look at the passenger. The man was tall, probably 6'2", wearing an immaculate charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. Everything about him screamed money, from the Italian leather shoes to the expensive watch that caught the light as he opened the rear passenger door. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with dark hair slicked back and a jawline that could have been carved from granite. But it was the eyes that made Ethan's stomach tighten slightly, cold, calculating, the kind of eyes that assessed and categorized everything they saw. "Good evening," Ethan offered with practiced friendliness as the man slid into the back seat directly behind him. The passenger didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that Ethan had spoken. He simply settled into his seat, adjusted his jacket and stared straight ahead at the back of Ethan's headrest. Ethan had learned long ago not to take it personally. Some people didn't want to talk, some were tired, some were assholes. It didn't matter. He'd get his fare either way. "Clifton Park, right?" Ethan confirmed, glancing at the GPS mounted on his dashboard. "Looks like about 32 minutes with current traffic. Well, what little traffic there is. Still nothing. Not even a grunt of acknowledgement. Fine." Silent rides were actually preferable sometimes. Ethan turned up the radio just slightly, some late-night talk show discussing local politics, and pulled away from the curb. The app had already started the trip timer. 32 minutes and he'd be $53 richer, minus RideLink's cut. They headed north on Interstate 87, the highway stretching out before them like a black ribbon. The drizzle had intensified slightly, enough to require intermittent wipers, but not enough to really slow them down. Ethan kept the sedan at a steady 68 miles per hour, just above the speed limit, but not enough to attract attention. In the rearview mirror, he could see the passenger's face illuminated occasionally by passing headlights. The man hadn't moved, hadn't looked at his phone, hadn't done anything. He just sat there, staring at the back of Ethan's head with an intensity that was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Ethan tried to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. He'd had weird passengers before. This was nothing, just another silent ride. They were approximately 15 minutes into the journey when the passenger's phone buzzed. The sound was loud in the quiet car, and Ethan saw the man finally move, reaching into his jacket pocket with deliberate slowness. He pulled out an iPhone, the screen's glow illuminating his face in pale blue light. The passenger glanced at the screen, and something flickered across his features. Not quite a smile, something colder. He answered the call but didn't speak immediately, just held the phone to his ear, listening. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, the radio's static-filled chatter filling the silence. Then the passenger spoke, and Ethan's blood turned to ice. The voice was barely above a whisper, soft and calm, but in the enclosed space of the car, every word was crystal clear. "Yeah, I've got the target. He doesn't suspect a thing." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles going white. His heart began hammering against his ribs. The target. The words echoed in his mind, bouncing around like bullets in a metal box. He forced himself to keep breathing normally, to keep his speed steady, to not react. Maybe he'd misheard. Maybe the passenger was talking about something else. A business deal, a hostile takeover. Rich people used that kind of language all the time, didn't they? But then the passenger continued, his voice dropping even lower, more intimate, like he was sharing a secret with a lover. "Dig the grave, we'll be there in 10 minutes. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Ethan's vision narrowed, focusing with laser precision on the road ahead, while his peripheral awareness exploded with terror. Every muscle in his body wanted to scream, to slam on the brakes, to throw open his door and run. But he couldn't. He was trapped in a metal box traveling 70 miles per hour down a dark highway with a man who had just calmly ordered someone to dig his grave. He glanced at the GPS through eyes that felt too wide, too aware. The destination hadn't changed, still showed the address in Clifton Park. But as Ethan watched, frozen in horror, the passenger reached forward, slowly, deliberately, and his finger touched the screen. The destination changed, the new address appeared, and Ethan felt his stomach drop into his shoes. It wasn't a residential address, it was a service road. County Route 43, an old maintenance road that dead-ended in the woods north of Round Lake. Ethan knew it. Every local driver knew it. It was the kind of place teenagers went to drink and make out. The kind of place where occasionally hunters found things that had been buried and forgotten. The kind of place where you could dig a grave and no one would hear the screams. The passenger ended his call without another word and settled back into his seat. In the rearview mirror, his eyes locked onto Ethan's reflection, and he smiled. It was a smile that said, "I know that you know, and there's nothing you can do about it." Ethan's phone, sitting in the cup holder, showed the updated route. The app had automatically accepted the destination change, 23 minutes to the service road. The GPS showed it clearly, a thin grey line that wound through increasingly rural areas before terminating at a small dead end marked with a warning icon. Dead end. How appropriate. Ethan's mind raced, cycling through options with the desperate speed of a drowning man grasping for air. He could call 911, but his phone was in the cup holder, and any movement toward it would be obvious. He could try to crash the car, but at this speed on this highway, he'd likely kill them both, or worse, just himself, leaving the passenger unharmed and very, very angry. He could try to talk his way out of it, but something told him that would only accelerate whatever plan was already in motion. The passenger sat perfectly still behind him, a coiled presence that filled the car with suffocating menace. Ethan could feel those cold eyes boring into the back of his skull, watching for any sign that he might do something stupid. The GPS showed 21 minutes remaining. Ethan's exit was coming up in 3 miles. If he was going to do something, he had to decide now. His foot hovered over the accelerator, his brain screaming contradictory commands. Floor it, slow down, swerve, stop, run. In the mirror, the passenger's smile widened fractionally, as if he could read every panicked thought racing through Ethan's mind. And in that moment, Ethan realized something that made his blood run even colder. This wasn't the first time this man had done this. Ethan's training from his brief stint in the Army Reserve kicked in before his conscious mind could fully process the terror. Breathe, assess, act, don't freeze. Freezing gets you killed. He forced his breathing to remain steady, even as his heart tried to pound its way through his ribcage. His hands maintained their grip on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, the posture of a man simply doing his job. In the rearview mirror, he watched the passenger, who had leaned back against the seat, seemingly relaxed. But Ethan recognized the posture now. It was the stillness of a predator conserving energy before the kill. The exit for County Route 43 was 18 minutes away, according to the GPS. 18 minutes to figure out how to survive. Ethan's mind catalogued everything in the car with methodical precision. His phone in the cup holder. Too obvious, too risky. The tire iron in the trunk might as well be on the moon. The doors had child locks that passengers couldn't override, but that wouldn't help him. The man could reach forward and grab him before Ethan could unbuckle and escape. Even if he managed to stop the car and run, those expensive Italian shoes probably concealed someone who kept himself in excellent physical condition. No, running wasn't the answer. The highway stretched ahead, and Ethan noticed they were entering a section with minimal lighting. The corporate parks and suburban sprawl of the Albany area had given way to darker, more rural stretches. Fewer cars, fewer witnesses. The drizzle had evolved into proper rain now, fat droplets that exploded against the windshield in rhythmic percussion. Terrible weather, Ethan said, keeping his voice level, conversational. Testing. The passenger said nothing, just watched. Ethan's eyes flicked to the speedometer, 68 miles per hour. The rain was getting heavier. He could feel the tires occasionally losing traction on the wet pavement. An idea began forming. dangerous and desperate, but possibly his only chance. The GPS showed 16 minutes remaining. They passed a green highway sign, Round Lake, 12 miles. Ethan knew this area. He'd driven it hundreds of times. In about 8 miles there was a rest stop, closed for renovations, but it had parking and lights. If he could, his phone buzzed. The sound was startling in the tense silence, and Ethan saw the passenger lean forward slightly, interested. The screen lit up with a text message preview. Ethan could see it from the corner of his eye. His ex-wife, probably checking if he'd sent this month's alimony payment yet. Popular guy, the passenger said. His first words since the phone call, and they hit Ethan like ice water. The voice was smooth, educated, with a trace of amusement that made Ethan's skin crawl. Just my ex, Ethan replied, keeping his tone light. Probably wants money. Don't we all? The passenger's voice carried that same cold amusement. Don't answer it. It wasn't a suggestion. Ethan's phone buzzed again, then went dark. The silence returned, heavier now, weighted with unspoken threat. 14 minutes. Ethan's mind raced through scenarios. What happened when they reached the service road? There would be someone waiting, the person the passenger had called. Maybe more than one person. They'd have dug the grave already, probably hours ago. This was planned, organized, professional. But why him? Ethan was nobody. A failed husband, a mediocre driver, a man whose most exciting life choice had been switching from Dunkin' to Stewart's for his morning coffee. He wasn't involved in anything illegal. He didn't owe money to the wrong people. He didn't know any secrets worth killing over. Unless this wasn't about him specifically. The realization hit him like a freight train. He was just a driver, a random driver. Someone anonymous, someone forgettable, someone whose disappearance might not even be noticed for days. The perfect victim of convenience. Can I ask you something? Ethan said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. No, the passenger replied immediately. 12 minutes. They were approaching the exit for Round Lake. The closed rest stop would be visible soon on the right side. Ethan's hands shifted imperceptibly on the wheel, his right foot hovering closer to the brake pedal. The rain was coming down harder now, visibility decreasing. The windshield wipers beat a frantic rhythm. Survive, survive, survive. In the mirror, Ethan caught the passenger checking his watch, that expensive piece that probably cost more than Ethan's car. The movement was casual, but Ethan recognized it. A man checking a schedule, making sure everything stayed on time. They were operating on a timeline. That meant the people waiting at the service road expected them at a specific time. If Ethan could disrupt that timeline, create chaos, maybe. The passenger's phone buzzed again. This time he answered immediately, his voice dropping back to that disturbing whisper. We're on schedule, Route 87 northbound. Should be there in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes, not 12 like the GPS showed. The passenger was accounting for something. Maybe the final turn onto the service road, the time it would take to navigate the rough terrain. Ethan's opportunity was shrinking with every passing second. The closed rest stop appeared on the right, its parking lot dark except for a single security light near the shuttered building. The area was empty, desolate, not the refuge Ethan had desperately hoped for. 9 minutes. His phone buzzed again, then again. Someone was calling now, not just texting. The screen lit up. Lisa Mobile, his ex-wife. She never called this late unless something was wrong, or unless she was drunk and wanted to reminisce about how he'd ruined her life. I said don't answer it, the passenger said, his voice hardening. I won't, Ethan replied quickly. Too quickly. He heard the fear in his own voice and hated himself for it. The passenger leaned forward, and Ethan felt his presence like a physical weight. A hand, strong, certain, reached past Ethan's shoulder and plucked the phone from the cup holder. Ethan's last connection to the outside world, gone. You won't be needing this, the passenger said, and Ethan heard the window behind him lower. The rush of wind and rain filled the car for 3 seconds before the window rose again. His phone was gone. Somewhere on the side of Interstate 87, crushed under the wheels of passing cars or drowning in a roadside ditch. 7 minutes. Ethan's breathing had become shallow despite his best efforts to control it. The passenger would notice, would know, but there was nothing Ethan could do about the panic rising in his throat like bile. The exit for County Route 43 appeared on a green sign ahead. 2 miles. You're going to take that exit, the passenger said, his voice conversational again, almost friendly. You're going to drive exactly as the GPS directs. You're going to maintain the speed limit. You're not going to do anything stupid like trying to crash the car or attracting attention from other drivers, because if you do, I promise you that what I have planned will seem merciful compared to what will happen instead. Ethan's voice came out as a croak. Why me? Wrong place, wrong time, the passenger replied with casual indifference. Nothing personal, you just picked up the wrong fare. 6 minutes. The exit sign grew larger. Ethan could see the off-ramp now, curving away from the highway into darkness. His last chance to stay on the interstate, to keep driving past the exit, to do something, anything, but the passenger seemed to read his mind. "I can reach you from here," he said quietly. "I can snap your neck before you even realize I've moved. I've done it before. It's surprisingly easy, and you'll be dead before the car even leaves the road. But then, I don't get what I want, and that makes me irritable. So please, Ethan, yes, I know your name. It's right there on your dashboard. Please don't make me irritable." Ethan's hands shook on the wheel. He tightened his grip until his knuckles ached. 5 minutes. The exit approached. Ethan activated his turn signal out of sheer muscle memory, the click, click, click absurdly normal in the nightmare his life had become. He began to slow down, the car following the curve of the off-ramp. County Route 43 was a 2-lane road that cut through dense forest. The rain hammered down, and the trees on either side created a tunnel of darkness broken only by his headlights. No other cars, no houses, no witnesses. The GPS showed a new instruction: continue straight for 3.2 miles, then turn right onto Service Road 4A. 4 minutes. Ethan's foot pressed the accelerator with leaden heaviness. The car picked up speed, the engine's hum filling the silence. In the back seat, the passenger had gone still again, that predator's stillness that meant the moment of action was approaching. "You know what's funny?" the passenger said suddenly. "Most people beg, they cry, they promise things, money, silence, anything. You haven't done that." Ethan's voice came out stronger than he expected. Would it matter? A pause. Then, no. 3 minutes. The forest pressed in on both sides, an endless wall of darkness. Ethan's headlights caught the reflective eyes of something, a deer maybe, or a raccoon, before it vanished into the underbrush. The road was getting rougher now, less maintained. Potholes appeared in the wet pavement, and Ethan had to slow down to avoid them. 2 minutes. Ahead on the right, Ethan saw the turnoff. Service Road 4A. No sign, just a gap in the trees and a rutted dirt path disappearing into the woods. His headlights swept across it as he began to turn, and in that brief illumination, Ethan saw tire tracks in the mud. Fresh tire tracks. Someone was already there, waiting. 1 minute. The car bounced along the service road, branches scraping against the sides with fingernail shrieks. The GPS showed 0.3 miles remaining until the destination point. About 30 seconds at this speed. Ethan's entire body was rigid with terror and adrenaline. This was it. The end of the road in every sense. But then he saw something that changed everything. Ahead through the rain and darkness, illuminated by his headlights, a small maintenance building, partially collapsed. And next to it, parked at an angle with its driver's door open, a police cruiser. The passenger saw it at the exact same moment Ethan did, and the energy in the car changed instantly. The predator's calm shattered. Ethan heard movement behind him, felt the presence shift, and in that fraction of a second Ethan made his choice. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The sedan's engine roared as Ethan floored the accelerator, the rear tires spinning in the mud before finding purchase. The car lurched forward, fishtailing wildly on the rain-soaked service road. Behind him, Ethan heard the passenger curse, the first crack in that terrifying composure, and felt movement as the man braced himself against the seat. Ethan aimed directly for the police cruiser's headlights, his horn blaring continuously, a desperate scream for help in the darkness. The distance closed rapidly. 200 feet, 150, 100. The cruiser's lights suddenly blazed to life, full high beams and light bars strobing red and blue into the night. But something was wrong. The pattern was erratic, flickering, and the cruiser itself sat at that strange angle, the open door revealing an empty interior. 75 feet. "You stupid!" the passenger snarled, and Ethan felt hands grab the back of his seat, pulling. 50 feet. Through the rain-streaked windshield, Ethan saw a figure emerge from behind the maintenance building. Tall, wearing what looked like a police rain slicker, but moving wrong, too casual, too unhurried. The figure raised something, and Ethan's brain screamed a warning before he consciously recognized what it was. Not a police officer, not help, a gun. Ethan yanked the wheel hard right, away from the fake cruiser, just as his windshield spider-webbed with cracks. The sound of the gunshot arrived a fraction of a second later, muffled by the rain and the roar of his engine. The car skidded sideways, the back end swinging out as Ethan overcorrected. "Stop the car!" the passenger roared, no longer whispering, no longer calm. One hand had grabbed Ethan's headrest, the other reaching forward toward the steering wheel. Ethan jerked the wheel left then right, violent corrections that sent the car careening across the narrow service road. Trees loomed on both sides, their trunks materializing from the darkness like prison bars. The passenger's hand found Ethan's shoulder, fingers digging in with brutal strength, pulling him back against the seat. Another gunshot. This one took out the passenger side mirror in an explosion of glass and plastic. Ethan couldn't see where he was going anymore, the windshield a maze of cracks, the wipers only smearing the damage across his field of vision. He was driving on instinct and terror, one foot on the accelerator, the other hovering near the brake, both hands fighting to maintain control as the passenger tried to overpower him from behind. The car hit something, a rock, a root, a pothole, and went airborne for a sickening moment. They came down hard, the suspension bottoming out with a metallic crunch. The impact threw the passenger forward, his grip on Ethan loosening for just a second. Ethan saw an opening in the trees to his left. Not a road, barely even a path, but something. He cranked the wheel, and the car plunged into the gap between two massive oaks, branches exploding against the hood and roof like artillery fire. "You're going to kill us both," the passenger shouted, and Ethan heard real fear in that voice now. The mask of control finally shattered. "Good!" Ethan screamed back, and meant it. The car bucked and heaved over the rough terrain, the undercarriage scraping against rocks and fallen logs. The headlights showed only chaos. Trees, darkness, rain, more trees. No path, no direction, just desperate forward momentum. Then the ground disappeared. The car's front end dipped sharply as they went over what Ethan's brain dimly registered as an embankment. For a moment they were falling, weightless, both men silent with the particular terror of having no control whatsoever. They hit the bottom with catastrophic force. The airbags deployed with shotgun blasts of compressed air and powder. Ethan's world became white fabric and chemical smell and pain. His chest, his face, his neck, everything hurt. The car had come to rest at a severe angle, the driver's side lower than the passenger's. The engine hissed and ticked, steam or smoke rising from the crumpled hood. Ethan's ears rang. His vision swam, but he was alive. He fumbled with his seatbelt, fingers clumsy and numb. The buckle finally released and he half fell, half crawled toward the driver's door. It wouldn't open. Jammed or just pinned against earth, he couldn't tell. The window. He found the button, pressed it. Nothing. Electrical system was dead. Behind him, he heard groaning. The passenger was alive too. Panic gave Ethan strength he didn't know he had. He twisted around, brought his feet up, and kicked at the window. Once. Twice. On the third kick, the safety glass finally gave way, falling outward in a sheet of connected fragments. Ethan dragged himself through the window opening, his jacket catching on jagged glass, tearing. He pulled free and tumbled out onto wet ground that smelled of rotting leaves and mud. Every part of his body screamed in protest, but he forced himself to move. He was in some kind of ravine or drainage ditch. The embankment they'd fallen down rose steeply behind the wrecked car, maybe 15 or 20 feet. Trees surrounded them on all sides, their branches forming a canopy that blocked most of the rain, but also any light from above. Ethan heard movement from inside the car, the passenger extracting himself. Run. The thought cut through Ethan's pain and confusion with crystal clarity. He had maybe 30 seconds before the passenger got free, maybe less. Ethan ran, or tried to. His left ankle gave out on the first step, pain shooting up his leg like lightning. Sprained, maybe broken. He caught himself against a tree trunk, gasping, and forced himself forward in a limping, lurching gait that was more controlled falling than actual running. Behind him, Ethan, the passenger's voice distorted by rage and pain. Close, too close. Ethan crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping his face, roots trying to trip him with every step. He had no idea where he was going. The darkness was absolute beneath the trees, the rain creating a constant white noise that masked sounds. He could be running deeper into the woods or toward a road. No way to know. His lungs burned. His ankle sent jolts of agony with each step, but terror kept him moving. A hand grabbed his jacket from behind. Ethan spun, falling backward, and the hand lost its grip. He hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Through the darkness and rain, he saw the passenger looming over him, suit torn and muddy, face bleeding from a cut above his eye, but very much functional and very, very angry. "Nowhere to run," the passenger said, breathing hard. "Middle of nowhere. No phone, no help coming, just you and me and—" A light blazed through the trees, sweeping across them both. The passenger spun toward it, raising one arm to shield his eyes. The light was bright, professional, a spotlight cutting through the darkness and rain. Behind it, Ethan heard an engine, a vehicle, approaching fast, crashing through the underbrush. "Police!" a voice shouted. "Don't move! Hands where I can see them!" Hope exploded in Ethan's chest. Real police, actual help. They'd heard the crash or seen the lights But the passenger wasn't raising his hands. He was smiling, that same cold, terrible smile from the car. "Right on time," the passenger said quietly. The spotlight drew closer, and as Ethan's eyes adjusted, he saw it wasn't mounted on a police cruiser. It was handheld, attached to a truck, a dark pickup with mud-spattered sides and no markings. The voice came again. "Got him, got him," the passenger replied. Ethan's hope died as quickly as it had been born. Not police, more of them. The ones who'd been waiting at the grave. Two men emerged from behind the spotlight, both wearing dark clothing and rain gear. One was massive, easily 6'5", with the build of someone who threw around heavy things for a living. The other was smaller, wiry, with quick movements and dead eyes that Ethan recognized from his time in the service. Combat vet, someone who'd seen and done things. The passenger wiped blood from his face, his composure returning. "He's more trouble than expected." "The car," the big one asked, "totaled. In a ravine about 200 yards back." The wiry one stepped closer to Ethan, studying him like a specimen. "He don't look like much." "Looks are deceiving." The passenger's voice carried grudging respect. "He nearly killed us both getting away." "Well," the wiry one said, pulling something from his jacket. A knife, the blade catching the spotlight's gleam. "He ain't getting away now." Ethan's mind raced, cycling through possibilities. 3 of them, one of him. Injured ankle, no weapons, no phone, no... Wait, the knife. The wiry one had a knife, which meant they'd planned to make this look like something other than an execution. An accident, maybe, or an animal attack, something that required less obvious methods than bullets, which meant they needed to get close. "On your feet," the passenger ordered. Ethan didn't move. His brain was working overtime now, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. 3 men, but they hadn't shot him when they had the chance. They'd grabbed a knife instead. They needed this to look like something specific. That gave him an edge, microscopic, nearly useless, but an edge nonetheless. "I said," the passenger began. "Why me?" Ethan interrupted, his voice stronger than he felt. "You said wrong place, wrong time, but you changed the destination. You planned this. So why specifically me?" The 3 men exchanged glances. The big one shrugged. The wiry one seemed impatient. But the passenger, the one who'd started this nightmare, he tilted his head, considering. "You really don't know," he said, and it wasn't a question. "Know what?" The passenger crouched down, bringing himself to Ethan's eye level, close enough that Ethan could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying, close enough to see the calculation in those cold eyes. "You picked up a fare 3 nights ago," the passenger said softly. "Young woman, 26 years old, brown hair. Took her from the airport to a downtown hotel." Ethan's mind scrambled through memories. 3 nights ago, Thursday night, he'd done maybe 15 rides that shift. A young woman from the airport. Oh, God. His face must have shown recognition, because the passenger smiled again, wider this time. "Now you remember. She was supposed to stay at that hotel. She was supposed to be found there. But you," he jabbed a finger at Ethan, "you talked to her, friendly driver, made conversation. And you told her about a better hotel. Cheaper, better reviews, better location. You even helped her change her reservation." The memory crystallized. A tired-looking woman with a heavy suitcase and heavier eyes. They'd chatted about Albany, about hotels, about how downtown could be sketchy at night. He'd recommended the Hilton Garden Inn instead, helped her cancel her original booking through the app. "She never checked into the first hotel," the passenger continued, "which meant when we came looking for her the next morning she wasn't there. Took us 2 days to track her down, 2 days we didn't have. And by then..." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "By then?" Ethan prompted. "By then she'd already talked," the wiry one interjected. "Spilled everything to a reporter. Now we got a mess that costs real money to clean up." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. What did she know? The passenger stood, brushing mud from his ruined suit. "Nothing that concerns you anymore, but you cost us time and money and exposure. So now you're part of the cleanup." He turned to the other 2. "Make it quick, and make sure..." A branch snapped in the darkness beyond the spotlight's reach. All 4 men froze. Another sound, closer, something moving through the underbrush with purpose. The wiry one raised his knife. The big one produced a pistol from inside his jacket. The passenger's hand went to his belt. The spotlight swung toward the sound and illuminated a woman standing 30 feet away, soaking wet, covered in mud, holding a gun in a 2-handed grip that looked remarkably professional. "U.S. Marshals," she said, her voice cutting through the rain. "Drop your weapons, now." Ethan's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Then he recognized her, the woman from 3 nights ago, the one he'd helped. She'd found him. She'd come back. For a frozen moment, nobody moved. The rain hammered down, and the spotlight created a surreal tableau. 3 would-be killers caught in the act, 1 battered driver sprawled in the mud, and a woman who'd materialized from the darkness like a ghost seeking vengeance. Except she wasn't a ghost. She was very real, very alive, and the gun in her hands wasn't wavering even slightly. "I said drop them," she repeated, her voice harder now. "I won't ask again." The wiry one was closest to her. Ethan saw his body language shift, the micro-adjustments of someone calculating angles and distances. Combat training. He was going to try something stupid. "Don't," the woman said, reading him as easily as Ethan had. "I've seen that look before. On better men than you, they're all dead now." The wiry one's knife hit the ground. "Weapon," she said to the big one. "2 fingers. Slow." The big man complied, carefully extracting his pistol and setting it down. His face showed none of the wiry one's calculation, just the resignation of someone who'd been caught and knew it. But the passenger, he hadn't moved. His hand remained at his belt, and his eyes never left the woman's face. "Sarah," he said, and his voice carried something that might have been admiration. "I have to admit I'm impressed. We had you in protective custody, federal safe house in Schenectady, with 2 agents babysitting. How'd you manage this?" Sarah. So that was her name. Ethan tried to reconcile the exhausted traveler from 3 nights ago with this composed, dangerous woman pointing a gun at 3 men without a tremor of fear. "The agents are fine," Sarah replied. "Drugged, not dead. They'll wake up with headaches and embarrassment, but they'll live. Unlike you 3 if you don't drop that weapon in the next 3 seconds. You drugged federal agents," the passenger said, almost laughing. "That's a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. Assaulting federal officers, escape from protective custody. 1. You're throwing away your immunity deal. 2. Sarah, be reasonable. We can... 3. The passenger's hand moved, but not toward his weapon. He raised both hands slowly, deliberately. All right, you win this round." His hand drifted toward his belt. "I'm just going to... touch that gun and you're dead," Sarah said flatly. "I might be throwing away my immunity, but shooting you would be self-defense. And honestly, after what you people did, I'd sleep just fine." Something in her voice made even the passenger believe her. His hands moved away from his belt, raising higher. "Good choice," Sarah said. She glanced at Ethan for the first time. "You okay?" Ethan managed a nod, not trusting his voice. "Can you walk?" "Ankle's bad, but I can manage." "Then get up and move toward me. Slowly. Stay out of my line of fire." Ethan struggled to his feet, his injured ankle screaming protest. He hobbled sideways, keeping his eyes on the 3 men. The passenger watched him with that calculating expression, like he was filing away information for future use, if there was a future use. When Ethan was safely behind Sarah, she spoke again. "Here's how this works. You 3 are going to lie face down in the mud, hands behind your heads. Then my driver here," she jerked her chin toward Ethan, "is going to use your belts to tie your hands." "Your driver?" the passenger said, and now he did laugh. "Is that what you told him, that he was just giving you a ride?" Sarah's expression didn't change. "Face down. Now." The big one complied immediately. The wiry one followed after a long moment, but the passenger remained standing, that smile playing at his lips. "You know what I think," he said conversationally. "I think you're bluffing. I think that gun isn't even loaded." Because Sarah Lynn, former accountant for the Castellano family, former protected witness, current fugitive, she's never fired a gun in her life. Her psych eval said she had an almost pathological aversion to violence, wouldn't even watch action movies. Sarah's jaw tightened fractionally. "People change. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think you grabbed that gun from one of your babysitters when you drugged them. I think you have no idea if it's even loaded. And I think..." The gunshot was deafening. The bullet hit the ground 6 inches from the passenger's left foot, throwing up a spray of mud and shredded leaves. The passenger jerked back, his composure finally, completely shattered. "Next one's center mass," Sarah said, her voice perfectly calm despite the smoking gun in her hands. "Face down. Now." The passenger dropped. Sarah waited until all 3 were prone before speaking to Ethan. "In the big one's jacket, left side, there's zip ties. Grab them." Ethan limped forward, his hands shaking as he patted down the big man's jacket. He found a handful of plastic zip ties, the heavy-duty kind used for securing cargo, or, apparently, people. The implications made his stomach turn. "Hands," Sarah instructed. "Tight as you can." Ethan worked methodically, securing each man's wrists behind their back. The wiry one tensed as Ethan approached, but a warning sound from Sarah kept him still. The passenger said nothing, but Ethan could feel rage radiating from him like heat from asphalt. When all three were secured, Sarah finally lowered her weapon. The rain had plastered her hair to her skull, and in the spotlight's glare, Ethan could see she was shaking. Not from fear, he realized, but from exhaustion and shock. The composure was a facade, paper-thin and ready to tear. "Your car's totaled," she said to Ethan, "but I've got a vehicle about a quarter-mile back. Can you make it?" "What about them?" "I've already called it in. Real police, not these fake badges. State police are en route, maybe 10 minutes out. We'll guide them here once we're somewhere safe." "You called the police?" "I thought you ran from protective custody." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "I ran from federal custody because these three," she gestured with the gun toward the prone men, "have people inside the system. People who'd make sure I never made it to trial. But state police? Different jurisdiction, different command structure. Harder to corrupt everyone. Not impossible, but harder." The passenger spoke, his voice muffled by mud. "You're still dead, Sarah. You know that. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. You can't testify against the Castellanos and live." "Maybe not," Sarah replied, "but I can try, and I can make sure you three go down first." She looked at Ethan. "Come on, let's go." They left the three men in the mud and started back through the woods, Sarah leading with the spotlight, Ethan hobbling behind. His ankle throbbed with every step, but adrenaline and shock kept him moving. "Why'd you come back?" Ethan asked, after they'd put some distance between themselves and the prisoners. "You could have just let me—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Because you helped me," Sarah said simply. 3 nights ago, I was running scared, had no idea who to trust. The marshals had me in a hotel that felt like a cage, and I was supposed to just sit there and wait to either testify or die. Then you, this random driver, you talked to me like a person, made me laugh about the shitty downtown traffic, helped me find a better place to stay." She paused, adjusting the spotlight's beam to illuminate a fallen log blocking their path. "That hotel you helped me cancel, the Ramada downtown, they found a body there the next morning. A young woman, mid-20s, brown hair. Overdose, they said, tragic accident." Her voice hardened. "Except it wasn't an accident. It was supposed to be me, and if you hadn't helped me change hotels, it would have been." Ethan's blood ran cold. "So they came after me because you accidentally saved my life, and in doing so you messed up their timeline, gave me an extra day to contact the journalist to get my story out. By the time they found me at the new hotel, I'd already made copies of everything, sent them to 3 different news outlets, sent them to the FBI, sent them to a lawyer in Boston who specializes in organized crime." She glanced back at him, and in the spotlight's backwash, Ethan saw tears mixing with rain on her face. "You saved me without even knowing it. So yeah, when I figured out they were coming after you, when I saw your name in the driver logs I'd kept from that night, I couldn't just let you die for being a good person." They emerged from the trees into a small clearing where a nondescript Toyota sedan sat waiting, engine running. Sarah helped Ethan into the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel. "How did you even find me?" Ethan asked as she put the car in gear. "I've been tracking your fares through the RideLink app. Took some hacking, but I've learned a lot of useful skills in the past year. When I saw you accept a pickup at the Riverside Corporate Center at midnight, a building the Castellanos own, by the way, I knew something was wrong, so I followed." She navigated carefully through the muddy terrain, heading toward what Ethan hoped was the main road. "The police cruiser," he said suddenly. "That was you?" Sarah nodded. "Stole it from an impound lot. Figured if I could create enough confusion, maybe you'd have a chance to run. Didn't expect you to actually try to ram it." A hint of a smile. "That took guts. Or stupidity. Maybe both." "Definitely both," Ethan agreed. In the distance, sirens wailed. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Sarah pulled out her phone, not hers, Ethan noticed, probably one of the marshals, and made a call. "This is Sarah Lynn, protected witness in the Castellano case. I'm approximately 1 mile north of County Route 43 on Service Road 4A. I have 3 suspects in custody and 1 victim who needs medical attention. Suspects are secured with zip ties. Approximately quarter-mile into the woods from the old maintenance building, you'll see the stolen police cruiser. Follow the tire tracks." She paused, listening. "Yes, I know I left protective custody. Yes, I know that's a problem. We'll deal with it later. Right now you've got 3 attempted murderers and 1 witness who can place them at the scene. I suggest you hurry before they find a way to escape." She ended the call and tossed the phone out the window. "Probably shouldn't have done that," she muttered. "But I'm tired of people tracking me." They reached County Route 43 just as the first state police cruiser screamed past. heading toward the service road. Then another. Then an ambulance. The cavalry, arriving just slightly too late to be useful, but right on time to clean up the mess. Sarah pulled over, killed the engine, and sat back with a long exhale. What happens now? Ethan asked. For you? Hospital, probably. Get that ankle checked. Give a statement to the police, then hopefully go home and try to forget this night ever happened. She turned to look at him. For me? Probably federal custody again. Different location, different handlers. Maybe a new identity if I'm lucky. Definitely a lot of questions about why I assaulted 2 marshals and stole a police cruiser. But you'll testify? Yeah, I'll testify. Not because I'm brave or righteous or any of that hero bullshit, but because they killed my sister. Her voice cracked. The woman they found in that hotel, the overdose, that wasn't random. That was Emily, my baby sister. She was visiting me. She was staying there because I was paranoid about the Marshall's hotel, so I got her a room downtown instead. And they killed her thinking it was me. Tears were flowing freely now, and Sarah made no attempt to stop them. So yeah, I'm going to testify. I'm going to put every single one of those bastards in prison. And if I die trying, at least Emily won't have died for nothing. Ethan reached over and gently took her hand. She squeezed back hard enough to hurt. They sat like that, 2 strangers bound together by violence and chance, until the police arrived to take their statements and separate them into different vehicles. As the ambulance pulled away with Ethan in the back, ankle wrapped, and morphine beginning to dull the edges of his pain, he watched Sarah being guided into an unmarked sedan by a woman in a dark suit. Their eyes met one last time across the chaotic scene of flashing lights and shouting officers. Sarah mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Ethan nodded, and then she was gone, driven away to whatever uncertain future awaited a witness who'd gone from protected to fugitive to hero in the span of 72 hours. 6 months later, the notification chimed at 11:32 p.m. Ethan, sitting in his new sedan, paid for by a victim's compensation fund and various legal settlements, looked at the pickup request and felt his stomach tighten reflexively. 6 months. 6 months of therapy and nightmares and learning to trust passengers again. 6 months of looking in his rearview mirror and seeing threats that weren't there. 6 months of healing, both physical and psychological. The pickup was at Albany International Airport. Destination downtown Hilton Garden Inn. Ethan stared at the notification. His finger hovered over accept. In the end, he pressed it. Because Sarah had been right. You couldn't stop living just because the world was dangerous. You couldn't stop helping people just because some people were monsters. But he'd installed a dash cam and a panic button, and he'd memorized every state police station location between here and Saratoga Springs. And he never, ever picked up fares that requested destinations to be changed en route. The passenger was a tired-looking businessman with a laptop bag and kind eyes. They made small talk about weather and traffic. Ethan recommended a good diner that stayed open late. The man thanked him, tipped well, and left. Just a normal fare, just another night. As Ethan pulled away from the hotel, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Verdict came in today. All 3 convicted. Life without parole. Thank you for everything. Stay safe. S. Ethan smiled, saved the number, and typed back, "You too. Be well." Then he turned on the radio, accepted another fare, and drove into the night. Because that's what you did. You survived. You helped when you could. And you kept moving forward, even when the road ahead was dark and uncertain, just like everyone else trying to make it through to morning. Thank you for listening. If you value a good narrative, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell to be the first to know when the next story arrives. Until next time.